Hello everyone and welcome back. I am as always Inquisitor Aura and this is how to roleplay in World of Warcraft, and today we are going to be taking a look at the monk. Please note that these are just generally accepted guidelines to socially acceptable and lore-friendly roleplay in World of Warcraft. There is a niche for every type and style of roleplay out there. What I am telling you here are the generally accepted guidelines that will not get you ridiculed. Masters of unarmed combat who move like dancers and bend and twist with the flow of combat like reeds in the wind. Monks are a relatively new class on Azeroth. The Pandaren on both the Wandering Isle and the mainland of Pandaria have begun spreading across the face of the world and taking their teachings with them. Now, one of the first things that's important to understand when role-playing a monk is that if you are a monk, like an actual monk, role-playing as actually a monk, chances are you learned it from a Pandaren. These monks aren't like typical Christian monks, although those do exist in World of Warcraft. They're more like Buddhist monks, who train their minds and bodies, but only fight when forced. That being said, there are Pandaren monk trainers all over Azeroth. The only places it seems that they have not managed to get to are Gilneas, which is currently held by the Forsaken, and Kazan, which has been abandoned, but most likely is still there. Prior to Mists of Pandaria, you could not have been a martial monk, as the Pandaren monk style had not spread out from either the Wandering Isle or Pandaria until the parting of the Mists. While there were traveling Pandaren from the Wandering Isle out and about for most of history, they were few and far between, and it is highly unlikely that they stayed in one place long enough to train anyone. It is also unlikely that they would have taught anyone prior to Mists of Pandaria, even if they had chosen to settle somewhere, because it was likely their only defense. A new, unknown fighting style is nearly impossible to plan for. Those few, and I mean very few, Pandaren wanderers would recognize this and realize that it gave them an edge in combat if they ever needed it. Now, it is possible to have been taught the way of the fist from a non-Pandaren master, and even be a teacher yourself. However, the root of all monk teachings is Pandaria, so somewhere at the beginning of your style's lineage, there is a Pandaren. Now, working off of the assumption that most of you were taught your path by a Pandaren, regardless of your race, then you were taught about Kang, Fist of First Dawn. Kang was the first monk, in the same way that Illidan was the first demon hunter, and it is ultimately from him that all other monks learned their technique. Kang lived during the reign of Emperor Lao Fei, known as the Slave Binder, the last Mogu Emperor, which was 12,000 years ago. And Lao Fei's favorite punishment for disobedience was family separation. Kang's son was taken from him and sent to build the Serpent Spine, where they toiled endlessly and were constantly threatened by mantid swarms. Kang was so grief-stricken that he chose to wear all black, and it was then that Kang had a revelation, that the Mogu were weak. The Mogu possessed dark sorcery and powerful weapons, but their empire was completely and entirely dependent on slave labor. Kang realized that if the Pandaren and the other servant races were ever to be free, they needed to fight back. However, none of the servant races were permitted to carry weapons of any sort, so Kang used the skills he had and took inspiration from the land around him, and over the course of many years, taught himself to fight with only his bare hands and personal power. One day, Kang issued a challenge to his fellow slaves. "Hit me," he said, and they tried, but not one landed a blow. Kang deflected and sidestepped every attack. "Our backs are hardened by the whips of the Mogu," Kang told them. "Our arms are powerful from building their fortresses. Our minds are sharp from working alongside our enemy. You think the Mogu are stronger, I think we are their strength." Inspired by Kang's defiance, the Pandaren begged him to teach them how to fight like he did. It was here that Kang earned his epithet of Fist of First Dawn. Eventually, Kang and his students were forced to flee to Kunlai Summit and built a monastery there, discovering, in the meantime, the prison of Zuen, who had been trapped there by Lei Shen. Kangs often conversed with the White Tiger and passed the august Celestial's teachings on to the Pandaren. Over time, the Pandaren rebellion managed to beat back and contain Lao Fei's forces to the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. Kang himself led the charge into the Vale and challenged Lao Fei to single combat. Kang succeeded in defeating the Mogu Emperor, but sustained fatal wounds in the process. Both Kang and Lao Fei died, and with his monumental sacrifice, the back of the Mogu Empire was shattered and Pandaria was finally free. Now that you understand the origin of the monk class, let's get into some of the other aspects of monk roleplay. Monks are highly philosophical and they do not use magic in the traditional sense. Their mastery of their skill is based almost entirely on their innate connection to the world. Whereas druids focus on the balance between the forces of nature, and shaman are tied to the balance between the elements and the people, the monk focuses on the balance of the self, inner thought and outer action, interaction between two unique peoples, and balance of mind, body, and spirit. Many non-Pandaren monks likely chose to become monks to regain some balance lost during so many years of war. Some perhaps are seeking inner peace. Some have even taken up the way of the fist to strengthen alliances as well as their own formidable fighting prowess. After all, being able to attack and defend both with and without weapons and armor is valuable, a very valuable tool in any warrior's arsenal. They focus on achieving harmony and balance of self rather than seeking it from outside forces such as the light or the void. This balance of self results in Qi, a spiritual power within all people but accessible to the monks through training. It is Qi that allows the monk blows to strike like maces and punch through armor. The most well-trained monks can even externalize their Qi and imbue it into mist that can be used for healing or spiritual copies of themselves to deliver thousands of blows upon a single enemy. And for the most part, most of you non-Pandaren monks, you were something else prior to deciding to learn the monk ways. What that was entirely up to you, but consider why you chose to walk the path of the monk. Maybe you had a moment of inspiration that made you want to change something about yourself. It could also be an emotional investment. Maybe seeking this philosophical inner peace is helping your character cope with some internal or external emotional struggle. Maybe you became a monk to help get over an addiction. This is a particularly good reason for blood elves to have become monks. Or maybe you just wanted a fresh perspective on the world. And of course, we can't have a good RP guide without having a list of some notable monks. Now, disclaimer, these are all Pandaren because Pandaren monks have been predominantly the only monks in history. I will update this later if we get some impressive other racial monks. The first of these monks is, of course, Kang of First Dawn, but since we have already talked about him, we will move on. The second of these monks is Emperor Xiao Hao, the last Pandaren emperor, the one who went through the trials and then shrouded Pandaria in a mist that lasted 10,000 years. Then, of course, there is Lord Terenzu of the Shadowpan, leader of the Shadowpan, head of the Shadowpan Monastery, and all-around badass Pandaren dude. And of course, we can't have this list without having the irrepressible Wanderer and Brewmaster Chen Stormstout. Monks are the masters of unarmed combat, able to easily outmaneuver heavily armed foot soldiers, dodge incoming projectiles, and put any career fighter on his guard. They fight with everything they are and all that they possess: fists, feet, head, and spirit. Well, that is going to be it for me for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember, if you like what you see and you want to see more, don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to comment below. Don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget to tell your friends, because we're at almost 700 subscribers, and I'm like insanely grateful for every single one of you for coming here and commenting on my videos and giving me suggestions. I have so much material that I can do now because you guys keep coming up with more and more things that you want to see, and I absolutely am positively grateful for that, for very, very much so. So thank you guys all so very, very much for helping to make this channel as successful as it has been so far. Anyways, like I said before, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great week, have a great weekend, and we will see you again in Azeroth.